Welcome to The Fight with Teddy Atlas, presented by Dynamic Striking. I'm Ken Rideout, joined as always by the voice of combat sports, the legend Teddy Atlas. Teddy, how you doing?
I'm good. You know, I know you're getting ready to go across the desert, so I just want to quickly say good luck because I probably won't see you until after you get out of the desert. And so good luck in your run in there with 200 other members of the Lost Tribe wondering about the desert. Hopefully you're not part of the Lost Tribe. Hopefully you wander your way out of the desert the same way as you run your way into the desert. But I'm sure your training has been elite and hard, but what it needs to be for such a event.
Yep.
So good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm ready. Go the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. I leave on Wednesday, back a week from Sunday. But yeah, speaking of a week from Sunday, good weekend for boxing versus the UFC for a change. It looks like we got the better fights. Boxing put on the better fights, at least from a competitive standpoint. Talent always deep as ever in the UFC. But man, we had two incredible fights this weekend, Teddy, and I know you're dying to speak about them. But let's jump right into it and talk about the Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez fight. You know, we had talked about all the intangibles, like the psychological state of both fighters. And to be honest with you, in the lead up to the fight, with some of the interviews Teofimo was doing where he actually got in a verbal altercation with his own father during a Mark Kriegel interview on ESPN, I think I texted you and Rob, I said, bet the farm on Taylor. It just looked like Teofimo was having like a psychological meltdown right in front of everyone.
Everyone thought that, not just you. But I didn't think that. I tweeted. Yeah. I'll read you my tweet. I tweeted. I had a lot of tweets out there. I know you read them, and I know a lot of people read them, and I'm glad they did. But I tweeted that Lopez has the same ability, I believe, as Floyd Mayweather did to perform under emotional chaos. Because for them, it's almost normal. They've lived in it. And I guess it turned out to be along those lines. Because I don't see any of this stuff out there in that crazy place called the internet unless somebody, brings it to my attention, right? And but I got a little something to pick from in between my teeth or my toes or, whatever excuse for being rude for a moment is, because I wasn't comparing his talent to Floyd's or his boxing style to him, obviously, or saying he's as good as Floyd. I was just making one point. He handles emotional stress like him when there's a fight. But I swear, Ken, there's many morons out there, you may have noticed, who truly are just dumb or they're straight up haters. Whatever it is. For whatever
You'll never
reason,
meet a successful person who's spending their time talking shit or hating other people on Twitter. So when you
when you
tweet
I never said
something,
they're successful.
And I'm just telling the haters out there, when you're tweeting something negative just because you got nothing better to do, if you have a gripe, it's cool to air your grievance or disagree. But just to talk shit and spread hate, you're a loser. You have nothing else going on. I would never waste my time trying to be nasty to someone,
100%.
ever.
For whatever reason, jealousy, they're unhappy with their lives, you just touched on it, whatever. But they contort my words into what they want them to say. That I'm comparing the two fighters' careers or talents. Listen, dimwits, read. If you're actually even able to read, if you know how to read, read what I'm at least saying. It's a free country, beautiful country, those freedoms. It's your prerogative. Say whatever you want, but at least be accurate. At least know what the hell I'm saying before you're making an embarrassing, stupid comment, dummy. I mean, if you're going to make a comment, Be aware what the freak you're commenting on.
How about this for a comment? Teddy, let me clarify something. Are you trying to compare Teofimo and Floyd? Are you suggesting that Teo's the kind of fighter Floyd was? Answer, no, I'm not. I'm just telling you they have a similar mentality.
And the same thing. Answer, dummy.
That's a simple question.
Read. And listen, real quick, over the weekend, I usually don't do this. I don't know why I am. But this past weekend, there was the Hall of Fame inductions, the new ones. And two of the people, I don't always think everyone, quite frankly, and I try to be very frank, whether people like it or not, but I think a lot of people come here for that. There's some people and fighters that just don't deserve to be in a Hall of Fame. But, you know, it is what it is. Maybe I don't deserve. I don't know. But, you know, whatever. But these two did deserve to be in. I'd like to spend probably about 40 seconds saying why. It's Tim Ryan and Tim Bradley. Now, Tim Ryan, the broadcaster, was a broadcaster and partner with Gil Clancy, who was a trainer, like I was. They were the voices of boxing for CBS during, I guess it was during the 80s, when boxing enjoyed perhaps its healthiest time since the 30s, 40s, 50s, when some of the greatest fighters ever were actually fighting each other. And they were terrific. And they were professional. They were solid. And for all the titles and good fighters that Tim Bradley, has beaten, including a couple of Hall of Famers, it was a fight that nobody's probably they're going to be shocked I'm going to say this, but it's his fight for me with a non-Hall of Famer that showed why he should be in the Hall of Fame one day. And that day came, of course, on the weekend. Because he simply, on that night, he refused to lose on a night where many fighters would have either been knocked out or just not gotten off the stool when he was brutally battered by a heavy-handed Russian named Ruslan Provatnikov, who had fought on my air many times, and I caught his fights. Bradley was concussed. He was out on his feet from the first round on, yet he lasted the distance simply because he refused not to. But here's the thing. He's got some company with people like that. A little bit, he does. But where he separated himself was he didn't just survive that night, which would have been pretty significant enough. But actually, he continued to take enough risks to win the fight. That night almost ended his career. But it didn't. He was too tough, too determined to allow it. He refused to be taken, and I talk about this all the time. He refused to be taken down that dark corridor into the black room at the end of it, which is where fighters go when they are knocked out. But instead, he continued to move in the other direction, to where there was light, and in doing so, he now walks down another hall, a hall of boxing fame. So I just thought it was worth saying that for the reason that I said it. And also, he did have one extra thing, Tim Bradley, going for him, an X factor that not everyone has. He had a great supporting family, a wife, and who I happen to know firsthand that he did, a wife and a family that was very, very important during those times, during all times for him in his career, but especially those times in their support and their belief in him. So, anyway, let's get to, what do we got? Teofimo Lopez, Josh Taylor. You know, Teofimo, 25 years old. Josh Taylor, 32 years old. You know, Teofimo, as you said, Ken, I mean, you're right. You sent me that text. You're very forthright about it. You said, bet the farm on Taylor. And I bet you a lot of people went to my bookie and bet the farm. I didn't bet the farm.
You know how you can tell they did? Because the line at the start of the fight, I think it opened. Taylor was a slight favorite at the opening when we first started breaking down the fight a few weeks ago. But at the right before the fight started, I think he was as high as a minus 225 to 250 favorite, 2.5 to 1. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, Teofimo beat the brakes off him. He outboxed him all night long.
Not according to two judges. We'll get to that more later. We'll get to that more later. Why are you making me yell so early in this show?
I just wanted I wanted to give the fans' perspective, or at least my perspective of how I saw the fight, and then hear what you have to say. Because what I saw, and again, I don't watch it from a judge's perspective. I watch it like a fan. And when I look at that fight, I'm like, I'd rather be Teofimo after basically every single round. And I had no bias. If anything, I might have leaned slightly towards Taylor. But my God, it looked like a boxing exhibition. Sure, Taylor has a...
Rob will get the cards. Rob will get those two judges' cards.
I've got them here, too.
Two judges, Ken, that if you go out and sign the petition we have for the National Commission, that on the Monday after the National Commission is formed, they will receive pink slips. Do you know what a pink slip is? That means that your services for work are no longer needed around here. So
don't
long.
Let the door hit you in the ass.
And don't let the door hit you on the backside on the way out.
Let me say this before I turn it over to you, is that when I looked at that fight, I'm like, okay, you could find a few rounds for Taylor if you really tried. And I'm not, again, I have
only
no
the
bias
early
one way or
rounds.
the other.
Only the early rounds.
But I'll tell you this, I'll say for Josh Taylor, my God, that dude is tough. He took a freaking beating. He was frustrated.
Well, he was almost out. He was almost out in the 10th round.
Yeah,
12th round.
Incredible toughness. And my God, like you said with the judges, if Teofimo doesn't win that last round so decisively, we have a freaking draw.
That's the scary thing.
How is this even?
That's
this is a
screaming.
monster fight. But here's the other frustrating thing from the promotion side is this is a mega fight. They're fighting in the theater at Madison Square Garden. I mean, I don't know if the fans just don't care about these guys or the promotion did a bad job, but this seems like the biggest injustice of the night. Not a pay-per-view fight, but we've got Broner the night before on a pay-per-view fight against some attorney.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't pay-per-view. I'm glad it was free
I could have bought a second round ticket for the Taylor Lopez fight the day before the fight, $1,000. Unheard of. Second row for a fight of that magnitude, $1,000. It's a shame because those guys deserve to make a lot more money for the quality of
There's plenty of people as they hear that, they're saying the prices are overestimated, that the prices are too high to begin with, that 1,000 should be the highest.
I don't disagree. That's a fair argument, but I will say I look at the prices for every fight because I love going to the fights.
Yeah, comparatively, I get it. Relatively, you're right.
You couldn't sit in the first 50 rows at a UFC fight for $1,000. Second row at the theater? I mean, you're practically working the corner at that seat.
I'll tell you another thing it put a light on. In the breakdown, the analysis of the fight beforehand, it was a hard pick, but I picked Teofimo. I had to make a pick. I picked Teofimo. And, not with great confidence, but I picked him because, as I said earlier, and I tweeted this day before the fight and the day of the fight, that I thought if anyone could handle that kind of emotional turmoil, it would be him. Much like Floyd Mayweather used to always handle it. He used to handle it the way you eat Cheerios in a breakfast with milk. I mean, like it was nothing. And I just also felt, as I said, that he was more talented. That Taylor was more buttoned up technically in a lot of ways, and more traditionally, but that Lopez was just had more ability, more explosive, quicker, faster. And when I say explosive, faster, better puncher, and explosive, sudden, quick, quick twitch if you want, fibers, muscles, and so that played out. I'm not always right, but that one I was on. And again, not strong because of all the craziness that was going on. But one thing that we highlighted, and we were on a button with this, Ken. You asked me a very very pertinent question at the time. You said, Teddy, who do you think the promoters want to win? If it comes down to a decision, who do you think the promoters will want to win? And I said, I think probably Taylor, because
you were right on the money there.
All the trouble that him and his father, Lopez and his father, has created for them, not being loyal, leaving, coming back, the whole thing. Other fighters have done it too, but the whole thing, and the way his stock had dropped up into this fight. His stock had dropped. He lost to Cambosis. He struggled in his last fight with Martin. The same way Taylor struggled in his last fight too, where I thought both of them could have lost those fights.
Easily.
But at the end of the day, I said, they probably want Taylor. He can make money across the pond. He's easier to deal with from at least on the surface, from what we can see. And sure enough, I said, if that's true, they're going to position their guys, their judges. They're going to go to the bullpen. And they ain't bringing Mariano Rivera out of there. Ken? They
better not bring him out if they're facing the Red Sox.
They're not bringing him out. They're bringing their judges out there to do their business.
Yep.
To do their business. And it's not good business. It's not.
Nope.
It's dirty business.
They did their best, though. They should keep using those guys because they will go to the friggin'... They'll go to hell for them. Use them a lot.
Well, listen, Ken. Use them a lot because once we get this national commission passed in Congress, once we do that, again, their days are numbered. They're done. Yeah. Adios, baby. They're done. And really, the fans, I'll say it one more time, I don't want to hear you complain anymore if you don't do something about it. Here's an opportunity to do something about it. Don't be lazy. Don't shrug your shoulders and say, it ain't going to help. No, it's a chance to do something. And if you're affiliated with the people that are doing wrong, then I guess you don't want to do it wrong. And if you're part of that media out there that don't want to talk about it, and plenty have talked about it, but if you're part of the ones that your bills get paid by promoters, so you don't want to go against them because you have an agenda to be on their side, because they don't want things changed. They love it the way it is, business as usual. And if you're dependent on those promoters to keep your websites going because you get advertising money from, I guess you're not going to be man enough or professional enough to talk about it. You're going to ignore it the same way as the people that don't want it are going to ignore it. But if you're not part of that, if you're just part of our fan base, look, we got over 200,000 views on our podcast when we put this up, that podcast, after the Lomachenko-Haney fight. And we got like 9,000 signatures. Now, listen, that's a lot of signatures somewhere in that neighborhood. But that's not the right number. If 200,000 years really can. I mean, you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that ain't the right number. If 200,000 were watching, how is only 9,000 signing the freaking petition? Come on.
Guys like Lopez right now should be out there saying, listen, let's at least get a fair judging system. Lopez almost got robbed from that fight. It's insane. Can you imagine if they gave that to Josh Taylor?
Say it again. Yell it from the mountaintops. Yell the truth from the mountaintops. If he doesn't win that 12th the way he does, am I correct with those two? Yeah, right?
It would have been a draw.
It would have been a draw. Would have been a
draw. Which is crazy. Teofimo won that fight easily.
And look, unfortunately, we talk about these things too often. But to get back, they're back. All right? They're back. Our favorite dysfunctional family, right? Yep. The Addams family. The boxing version of the Addams family. Teo and his dad are back. And Top Rank got to deal with it. They got to deal with it. They're back, baby.
What a crazy relationship. Imagine knowing that your promoter genuinely wanted you to lose the fight. How do you have a conversation with them the next fight? Yeah, who do you got for me? Now we got someone this time we know can beat you. They're trying to get him knocked off.
You're a businessman. How's this for an idea to make money? How's this? I know ESPN's ratings haven't been great because they don't put... look at that undercard. Look at what they put on. Really. I mean, but week in and week out, if you don't get the big fight, you get taken advantage of. You get one-sided fights, one-sided beatdowns for the guys that they sign up. They want to be future champions, so they just feed them raw meat. But we get good fights once in a while. But if ESPN, if they want, and if Top Rank wants to really cash in on this thing, here's a little piece of advice. Go ahead, you could do it. You don't even have to send me a check. Start a reality show with Teo and his father and follow them around. Put a camera crew together. And
problem with that is Teofimo's dad would tell them that the price tag is $50 million.
Well, figure it out and follow them around. You know, call it there could be two versions: the domestic version over here, and the international version to my brothers and sisters across the pond. You know, that version would be tea with Teo, right? Tea and muffins, whatever, with Teo, and the other one could be just Teo time, or as the world crashes with Teo. Remember, the world turns. This will be as the world tilts. As the world tilts.
Teddy, the sad part about all this, and you know this, we've talked about this, is Teofimo is a really nice kid. Outside of the boxing and the craziness,
he's a great kid.
He's a nice kid. He's just being
dragged
down by the dad.
I said it. I was the first one to say that. But listen, hey, can you knock him being loyal to his father, though? Can you really knock that? Even if it's insanity to us, can you knock that he's loyal to his father? And his father had something to do with his boxing career. I don't know.
But I
get
make
it.
the point
I get it. I get it.
Once someone crosses the line, you tell them, dude, if you keep this up, I just can't do it. You can't just take us both down. It's crazy.
Well, they're getting their second chance. They're getting their second chance, to your point, Ken, and it's a good point. They're getting their second chance now. Let's see if they make changes. I don't think they will, but let's see. But I'll say one thing. I will say one thing. The father was more refrained, more controlled, more composed. He shut his mouth in a corner. Instead of giving crazy advice, which he's prone to doing, and ridiculous advice, he basically gave no advice. He kept his mouth shut. And no, it was the right thing to do. And he left it up to the genius, his son, the genius, the performer in this case.
Yep. He
said one piece of advice. I think it was after the second or third round. He said one piece that was brilliant. It was really brilliant. I know some people are going to say, but Teddy, you're kidding around because, he didn't really give him advice. No. It was the right advice from him. He said to him, figure it out. He did. He said, no, but he did. He said, figure him out. That's what he said, to be exact.
That's what he did, too. Like you said, he had the early rounds for Taylor, and then once Teo figured him out, there was a moment where Teo did like a crazy step with his foot, and he put his hand down, and he started showboating, and I was like, oh, shit, he thinks
and
he's
Ken,
got him.
You're right. Ken, you're right. The body language was all you needed to see, that he said, I'm the boss.
It was a distinctive moment, right, where he did some shuffle, and I was like, oh, shit.
It was.
Teo's got him.
And it was. And you know what? The father was right, because the son actually immediately responded. I remember, I heard it. The son said, I got him. And he did. He said, I got him. And he did. He had him figured out. As far as the analysis of the fight, I'm going to put out there something. Some people are going to probably push back a tiny bit. I don't think much, but a tiny bit. Some of the people that maybe think this stuff out a little bit more thoroughly, and they think they're onto something, and maybe they are, but they're going to say something like, well, maybe it should have been closer because Teo wasn't doing he wasn't moving his hands a real lot, and the other guy was moving his hands, but the other guy wasn't landing, number one. Number two, I'll tell you why I thought it was not close. Teo controlled the rhythm of the fight. The other guy had no rhythm, whatever. But Teo, he controlled. The other guy looked robotic. But Teo created the rhythm, found the rhythm, had the rhythm of the fight, and he landed the more stunning, telling punches, the more effective. All night long. He hurt him several times, and he landed them all night. He was never hurt by Taylor. And because of that, that's professional scoring criterion. It's not amateur. It's not who throws. It's who lands and who impacts. He landed when he landed. He didn't throw a lot, and he impacted. But I'm sure there'll be someone, I want to see what you think of this, that will say that maybe Teo swayed certain people to think it was further apart because what's the word I'm looking for? His pizzazz or flashiness, because he was more flashy. You made a good point with his body language and dropping his hands sometimes, showing that he was in control, being a little flashy. But for me, he was being effective at the same time. But I'm sure there's some people that are going to say the other guy was working, the other guy was trying, the other guy was strong, but for me, he wasn't effective. He was getting caught, and he was fighting a stupid fight, but he was trying. And there'd be some people that would say, well, maybe that's why the judges had it close, because the other guy got points to the general public for being flashy. And I'm going to knock that down. I get it. I could understand you maybe saying that and thinking that, where it gets your attention, but it still has to be real. It still has to be effective. It still has to be tangible damage. And the tangible damage was put there by one guy, Teofimo. And I'm going to say this for the analysis. Teofimo, besides being quicker, more explosive, more instinctual, besides all that, and handling the pressure the way he did, he just had a much smarter, more cerebral fight plan. The other guy fought a stupid fight, and I don't like to call people stupid, but he fought a dumb fight. He just walked in cold, and I talked about this in the pre-fight analysis, that neither guy should walk in cold, just walk in. That both got caught with counters in their prior fights and got hurt. And that they should look to counter, they should look to feint, they should look to jab. They should not just walk in cold. And for the most part, Taylor, the southpaw, walked in cold all night. He fought a dumb fight. I even tweeted during the fight, his trainer needs to tell him, look to catch Teo, especially early on. There was spots where Teo was reaching a little bit, lunging a little bit, a little vulnerable. Look to catch him with that southpaw right hook, the counter hook. Catch him on the way in. Don't go chasing him, because you got a quick guy, an instinctual guy, a fluid guy, a guy with quick twitch. If you chase him, you're going to walk into something. Let him come to you and counter him. Take advantage of some of his reckless aggression early on. Now, later on, that aggression worked for him, because like Pacquiao used to do, he jumped in quick enough to get away with it. Very explosive, and it had great results for him against Taylor. But early on, there were spots where you could have caught him coming in, and even later in the fight. But he didn't have that kind of mindset, Taylor, or that kind of preparation, that kind of fight plan at all. And Teofimo might have been his own fight plan. He didn't get maybe any help from anybody in camp, but it was the right fight plan. It was an instinctual fight plan. He knew he had to use his speed, his instincts. He knew he had to counter. And you know what? He counter-punched beautifully. He countered this guy coming in. He took advantage of this guy coldly, just walking in. And he countered the crap out of him. And he used the right punches. He used the southpaw killer, the right hand that's effective a lot of times against the lefty. He used that, and he mixed it up. He fought a really good fight. And I'm going to say something that's going to upset my brothers and sisters across the pond, but listen, the truth is the truth. Like Howard Cosell, the indomitable Howard Cosell used to say, I'm just telling it like it is. And I said this earlier. I'm on record. And they didn't like it the same way they didn't like when I said it about their beloved, who is their beloved heavyweight over there? Joshua. Yeah, their beloved heavyweight champ, Joshua. I said about him, I said it about Taylor. They're both overrated. They're overrated. And I said it before this fight. They're overrated. Listen, he's a nice... And who did Joshua beat? Martin, a guy named Martin, to win the heavyweight title. And who do you ever... And then he lost to Ruiz. And then, and then he loses twice to a cruiserweight who's a terrific fighter. But, I mean, and he's great. He's great.
You're making too much sense for them.
But I digress. I'll go back to the latest guy that I'm upsetting them about. Taylor. I mean, for me, yeah, he fought a good fight with Prograis. He looked good. That was maybe the best he ever looked, to be honest with you. And
definitely.
And with Pedroza, Valdez was a Valdez, the ESPN fighter. Tough, strong kid, but kind of, he got lucky in that fight, I thought, where he dropped him twice. But one time he dropped him with an uppercut because the referee tapped on his back. And Valdez, I think it was Valdez kind of relaxed, thinking they were going to break, which was his fault. You shouldn't do that. Protect yourself at all times. He relaxed, and he got caught in an uppercut that I thought won the fight. I thought that cemented the victory for Taylor.
You're talking about the fight after the Prograis fight. He fought Alpion Kopsanong, and then he fought Jose Ramirez.
Yeah, it was Ramirez then, right?
Yeah.
The undefeated Ramirez.
He was undefeated, 26-0 at the time. Yeah. He got a unanimous decision.
Yeah. And listen, it was a nice win, but I thought he got a little fortunate in that fight, as I just said. But like I said, then I saw him really struggle. I thought he lost in his fight before the Lopez fight. What was that fight against Catterall?
Jack Catterall. Right? Who's also 26-0, like Ramirez. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Same exact record.
And I thought he fought that fight the way he fought this fight. In a way, he was better in this fight, but he just walked in. Well, Catterall just walked in trying to catch him. And that's what he did for the most part here against Lopez. And he paid for it here. Really paid for it because, Lopez could punch more. Although he got dropped against Catterall and he got hurt badly. And he showed a lot of heart surviving that. But I just thought that he was overrated, that they over-exaggerate some of these guys' ability before they've really been down the road in enough tests to really, truly know before you start making them, like, anointing them to the Mount Rushmore of fighters, talking about them like there's Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. I mean, please. And that's how they're going to talk about Lopez now, that he won. Yeah, they're going to over-exaggerate that too. And listen, I just give him all the credit in the world for what he did. But, again, some of it had to do with him, most of it. But some of it had to do with the guy he had in front of him, with Taylor. That Taylor, again, in my estimation, Teddy Atlas's estimation, he wasn't as good as he was built up to be, and he fought a dumb fight. And look, Lopez maybe had something to do with that, obviously. And Lopez gets credit, and he's getting credit right now. You idiot haters out there, idiot haters. Don't start flexing my words to where they're what you want them to be. No, he was terrific. But just like with some of these other fighters, that's not anoint Lopez as Duran and Leonard and those kind of guys yet. Give him yet. Because last time you did it after the Lomachenko fight, what happened? And I know people will say, oh, maybe he really wasn't right against Kambosos. Okay, but then what about his fight against Sandor Martin, where a lot of people thought he lost that fight, and he got dropped in that fight? So, again, calm down. Let them go down the road a little bit before you start going bonkers. But to finish up with the analysis, First 3 rounds, close. And then he pulls away. He separates himself. And thank God he did. Because otherwise the judges had something for him that wasn't nice. So, how's he separate himself? Again, counterpunching, mixing it up, using his instincts, being faster, quicker hands, quicker movements, more explosive, being cerebral, whether it's an innate intelligence or a pure intelligence, whatever it is, instinctual intelligence. It's an intelligence in the ring that shows up, and it showed itself. And I like the way they conducted themselves after the fight, both him and the father. I told you during the fight, I liked the way the father conducted himself. And after the fight, both of them were much more buttoned up, much more controlled together with their comments. And, we can only hope that they stay on that path, whatever. It's up to them. They earned the right to do what they want. They got in there. They did the hard part. But I think I covered pretty much all of it.
I think you did too. Otherwise, we could beat this thing into the ground. There's so many nuances to talk about with this fight. But one of the highlights, like we said earlier, was the mental health, the mental state of the fighters. And Teddy, one of the best things you can do to work on your mental health is to take care of your physical health by eating a healthy, balanced diet. And the best thing you can do to improve your diet is to incorporate Athletic Greens. Go to athleticgreens.com/Atlas and get 10 of these free travel packs with your first purchase. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one green drink that incorporates 75 whole food sourced ingredients, basically an insurance policy for your body's health and immunity. You get all the vitamins and minerals you need. No need for any other supplements. A scoop of Athletic Greens in the morning mixed with your favorite drink of choice, and you're good to go. Go to athleticgreens.com/Atlas and they'll send you 10 free travel packs with your first purchase. I'll be carrying those travel packs across the Gobi Desert, and every single thing I take on that trip has to mean something because I have to carry that stuff for an entire week on my back. So that's how important Athletic Greens is. One of the other things I've done is I've got a ton of audiobooks downloaded because I'm going to bring an MP3 player, listen to audiobooks, and one of the ones that I have queued up to listen to for a third time is a great book by my favorite author, Teddy Atlas. It's called Atlas, From the Streets to the Ring, A Son's Struggle to Become a Man by the great Teddy Atlas. I highly recommend you check this out on audible.com. Teddy, now that we're finished with the business,
let me say one thing. Yes. One thing about, before we close the book, if you will, since you just referenced my book, on Teofimo and Taylor. Taylor specifically, I think I was pretty specific, but I'll throw in one other. He was long. He has long arms. He's taller. He didn't use that reach. I really felt that he needed to use, and I said it in the pre-fight analysis, he needed to use that reach to create distance, to make it hard for Teo to get close to him. And make Teo take risks and chances and jump a little bit where then he could catch it with a counter, whether it was the counter left hand or the counter right hook. But he didn't do that. He didn't use his reach at all. At all. And he paid a price for that. So that's it. I just wanted to make sure that I tagged that.
Well, let's get into a fight that might have even been a more competitive and entertaining fight, certainly more action-packed, and that was the young Jaime Munguia in tough against the veteran Derevyanchenko from the Ukraine. Holy crap, what a fight this was. Oh my God, I was like, I was bouncing back and forth between UFC and Teofimo Taylor fight, and I just spaced out, and all of a sudden I saw a tweet something about Munguia, Derevyanchenko. So after all was said and done, I went and watched that one on a playback on DAZN. Oh my God, even knowing who won the fight and what the outcome was, that fight was incredible. The chin on Munguia, Derevyanchenko hit him with so many shots. I don't know if Munguia has a chin made of granite or if Derevyanchenko just can't crack. But my God, Munguia walked through a friggin' inferno of punches. And I thought Derevyanchenko won the fight. He certainly lost the last 2 rounds, and he lost the last one 10-8. I thought Munguia might stop him with body shots in the 12th round. Derevyanchenko showed the heart of a champion just to get to the finishing bell, and Munguia gets the decision. But for my money, Derevyanchenko was up big going into the last 2 rounds. Here's another interesting subplot or side note for this fight. A couple weeks, apparently, so the announcers said, a couple weeks before the fight, Munguia's people offered Derevyanchenko money to make it a 10-rounder instead of a 12-rounder, and Derevyanchenko was adamant and turned down the extra bread and said, no, 12 rounds. Well, had he gone 10, he's the winner. But who knows? Maybe Munguia picks it up even more. Maybe
maybe the judges adjust their pencils a little bit.
Saying.
But what it also speaks to is that do not allow De La Hoya and company to be picking your stocks. Don't allow them to be advising you.
Hold on. I do want to pick them. If they're putting me in the same stocks they're buying, I want them. They'll beg, borrow, and steal to win.
But don't let them pick your stocks. Don't allow them to be your chief advisors and everything, because if they got their way in anything, because if they got their way, if Oscar and company got their way, that fight would have been changed to 10 rounds, and then their guy, Munguia, would have lost. He wouldn't have. He needed those last 2 rounds to win.
100%. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and suggesting that had he know it's 10, maybe in the 8th he starts fighting like he did in the 11th.
They went with money, as it was said on the broadcast, as it was announced and documented by the broadcasters, that De La Hoya's people, that Munguia's people, went to Derevyanchenko's people and Derevyanchenko, and they offered him money to switch from the 12-round title fight to a 10-round. For whatever reason, maybe they didn't think Munguia was in top shape. Whatever it was, maybe they were worried about, step up in class. This was a step up in class. It was a step up in class. It had to be maybe a step up in class, which it was. Whatever it was, they thought they were protecting their investment, their fighter, and they said, please switch it to a 10. If Derevyanchenko's people and him say, yeah, well, you know what? Derevyanchenko wins. If the scorecard was the same, if there was no hanky-panky, which there's always a chance.
The only argument you could make, maybe Munguia fights a different fight if he knows it's 10 round. Maybe
I'm not making that argument. I'm not making that. Well, the way it looked, because the styles of the fighters. It certainly didn't look
like he was taking it easy.
No, the styles of the fighters. I go by styles. I go about tangible stuff, not about if, but, ooh. I saw what I saw. The style of Derevyanchenko, he's a busy fighter. He throws a million punches. And by the way, he's not a puncher. If he was, he might have knocked out Munguia. But he's a game guy.
I mean, he
throws a million punches. He's a puncher machine. He's not a puncher, but he's a volume puncher. He's not a power puncher. But that's why I say it would have been the same, because he would have thrown all those punches early on, maybe even more, because he wouldn't have had to worry about the championship rounds. So he could have emptied the gas tank even a little more. So I think it would have been the same. And again, if you're looking for a stock investment, or even if you want to know what the weather is, don't ask De La Hoya and them, because really you'll be going out there, with a tank top and bathing suit, thinking you're going to the beach, and meanwhile you needed an umbrella. It's raining cats and dogs. So really,
it's raining lefts and rights.
Lefts and rights, even better. Thank you. Because again, I'm going to say it again. He went to Derevyanchenko representing Munguia and said, let's switch this to a 10 round. If they had listened, if they had gone, Derevyanchenko has too much pride. He wanted that title. He's lost it before. He wanted one more chance, one more bite at the apple. So he wanted that. Even with the money, he didn't care. Extra money, no. I want this title. I think I can win it. And he was right. He could have won it. And for him, if he doesn't turn down that money to go down to 10 rounds, if he doesn't listen to what De La Hoya and them wanted him to do, he wins, and De La Hoya's investment, fighter, protege, that he was trying to protect by switching it in his mind to 10 rounds, he loses. He loses. So thank goodness for Munguia that Derevyanchenko didn't listen to Munguia's representatives, because they weren't representing him in a really proper way, as it turned out, at least. I mean, nobody, has complete, foresight to know that. We can't predict the future. But, man, whether they didn't believe in him enough, they knew something we didn't know about training, whatever. But Munguia didn't look like training or lack of training hurt him, because he was stronger than Munguia, stronger than Derevyanchenko, and that's why he won the fight in the last couple rounds. Otherwise, you don't win the fight.
Which begs the question of, what the hell were they looking at in training camp? He must have looked pretty, out of shape to say, we can't do it, 12 rounds, no can do, let's go for 10, right? And what does that do to Munguia's mindset going into the fight? Knowing all this in advance and what we saw, I would have been comfortable betting on Derevyanchenko, and then seeing the result before they announced the scorecards, I'd be like, holy shit, we did it. We got this one.
Well, I'll tell you somebody who was confident about Derevyanchenko, since you brought it up. My friend and a friend of this show, Pedro Martinez Fraga, he told me he wanted to make sure he was on record. He sent me a text before the fight. He said, I'm on record, Teddy, remember. I am picking Derevyanchenko, and he came close. He also picked Lopez.
To me, he picked a winner.
He got 1 out of 1, 1 out of 2. But he came very close to getting and an underdog, too, a nice underdog.
I didn't realize Pedro was such a boxing insider that he
Oh,
had
yeah.
that kind
Well,
of
he
insight.
was a former fighter, too. He's been involved in boxing his whole life and fighting. He fought to get where he is.
The fighting attorney.
Yeah, he fought to get. This is a man who, came from Cuba. His mother came over here. They came here from Cuba, as far as the bit I know, and he was introduced to fighting at a very, very early age, and was around a world champion fighter.
My favorite Cuban mantra is, there's nothing you can do to me that Castro has not already done.
Yeah, that was they had some bad times over there, and thank God for the United States of America that lot of them risked their lives. And lost their lives, some of them, to get here, to come to this beautiful, free country. And a lot of fighters that never, they could only be Olympic fighters over there, which didn't amount to taking care of their families, where it didn't result in that, or a better life for their families. But they risked, and they came here, they defected, they came here, and a lot of them became world champions and wealthy, because they came here, and because, of course, they were good and they worked very hard.
Those are the ones we hear about. But I think a lot about immigrants, and I think a lot of times it's lost on us as Americans that when people are immigrants, I think we should have a legal immigration system, don't get me wrong, but I think that it's lost on a lot of people that these people are fleeing like a violent, a lot of times dictator-controlled country. They don't speak the language, they don't have any money, and you're just like, once I get there, I'll figure it out.
100%. But a lot of them get taken advantage because it's not a legal system.
Of course.
A lot of them get in, this horrible, human trafficking where they get raped and tortured. And,
that part of the system is not publicized enough.
No, not enough.
There are people on the other side of the border taking advantage.
We can't take care of our own people here. There has to be a system. because we have so many people. My foundation helps a lot of people, and not more than any others, but we do our part. So I know what I'm talking about. The people, we have a food pantry, my foundation, that we feed people because there's people in this country that don't have enough food. So we have to take care of those needs before we can just completely be open to having everyone. There has to be a system. I want to take care of everyone, but there has to be a proper system to do it right. But anyway, again, we digress for a second into that, but into an important thing in life, an important fight in life. But getting back to the analysis now of this terrific fight that's a candidate for Fight of the Year now, Munguia and Derevyanchenko. A couple things. I had picked Munguia to win. And the reason why I picked him to win, simple. 11 years younger. I just thought youth would eventually be served. And it almost wasn't, but it was. I think youth won the fight for him, and heart, and grit, and a great chin. And they both fighters showed that heart and grit. Both of them. And they deserve nothing but accolades for that. They both behaved like champions. But I thought that youth served Munguia in the end. That the younger guy was able to prosper because he was younger. And he was determined. He was all those other things too. It wasn't just youth. But I felt that it showed throughout the fight that Derevyanchenko, I know he's only got like 19, 20 fights, but he had a lot of amateur fights. He's had a lot of miles on the old and a lot of tough pro fights. And he's 37 years old. And I thought, Ken, during the course of the night, that age showed. What I'm talking about showed that his knees, his legs were betraying him, that his legs were getting old, right in front of our eyes, buckling. His heart wasn't getting old, but his legs were getting old, right in front of us. And then, of course, in the last two rounds, and then, of course, the last round, where the commentator, he was a little erroneous, I believe. He said it was a left hook to the liver. A lot of times it is. This was to the solar plexus. It was to the middle of the stomach. It was to the same place that the great Bob Fitzsimmons in the 1920s, he was middleweight. Listen to this, Ken. Middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight champ of the world. Bob Fitzsimmons.
That's
most
crazy.
of our fans, a lot of them won't even know about him. The historian ones will. But you get a little history here sometimes. And I know fans like it, at least a lot of them do. They tell me, or they tell somebody. But and it gets back to me, put it that way, through the bottle on the shore. I'm walking the shore, walking sometimes thinking to myself, I love the beach, and I see a bottle float up on the beach. And I open up the bottle, and in the bottle is a note. Teddy, keep talking about the old fighters on your podcast with Ken.
I'm
please.
imagining you, Teddy, walking on the beach in Staten Island with one of those metal detectors and like a disguise on, looking for buried treasure or something that someone
no
forgot
metal
on the
detector,
beach.
but I'm just walking, lost and walking. But
and the police. The song in the background is The Police, Message in a Bottle. You know that song? Message in a Bottle.
Yeah, of course. They sing it with a better tune. But, yeah, I get it. And listen, the end of the day, Derevyanchenko, he throws a million punches. He was winning the fight. Why? He was landing more. Of course, Munguia, there were a lot of close rounds. Munguia hurt him several times, but Derevyanchenko hurt Munguia in the fifth round. It was an extraordinary show of courage, resiliency, and behavior of a champion that allowed Munguia to survive that fifth round. To survive that fifth round the way he did, where he refused to be dropped. He refused to be gone. he just found a way to get through. He was hurt. The guy's not a huge puncher, but he hit him a lot of volume. And he survived and then came back in the 6th and won the round. His recovery skills reminded me of Arturo Gatti.
Yep.
The way that man used to get hit and recover so quickly. It was just extraordinary. And to finish off about Bob Fitzsimmons, he invented to a certain, and put it this way, he made it his signature punch. If he didn't invent it, he made it popular. He brought to light the solo punch. Back in those days, people didn't understand the anatomy to that degree that you hit a guy in the middle of the stomach, in the pit of the stomach, and you knock his wind out. It's a solar plex punch. He understood it. And he actually made a living and won titles just aiming a punch to the solar plexus and completely disabling fighters back in the 20s. So that was the punch. It was to the solar plexus in the middle of the stomach that Derevyanchenko got caught with. And again, just like Munguia in the 5th round showed extraordinary toughness, heart, resiliency, character to survive, well, Derevyanchenko showed the same thing. He might not be technically a champion, but in my book, after that fight, after the Triple G fight, I think he's a champion. I just, in his own, should be looked at. I'm not saying he got robbed. He didn't get robbed, I don't think. I think Munguia came back and earned the right to keep his title. But Derevyanchenko earned the right to be thought of the way we think of champions. Put it that way.
Well, I'll say this about Derevyanchenko. For the people who don't know, his 4 losses came again. A split decision loss to Danny Jacobs, unanimous decision loss to Gennady Golovkin, unanimous decision loss to Charlo, and a majority decision loss to Carlos Adames. But let me read you this. I thought that this was, and now Munguia. But this was one of the best quotes summarizing Derevyanchenko's career. Sergio Mora, who works for The Zone, I thought this tweet was excellent. At 37, Derevyanchenko's 0-4 in big fights and will probably never win a world title. A special fighter with championship heart and ability that just happened to fight in a generation with gifted champions. He's the Ukrainian Obakar. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Sergey is a former champion, former fighter, so he would appreciate Sergio. He would appreciate Sergio Mora, who I caught a lot of his fights, even his contender fights on ESPN when he won the guy. That's how he was found. He won the contender against Peter Manfredo, and he got found, and then he wound up going on to win a world title in boxing, and now he's doing a good job as a commentator. But he can make that statement because he's been there. He understands that. He understands that environment, that territory. He understands the luck factor to the point that you can't choose what era, what time you're around, and who's around during that era, during your time. You can't choose. It is what it is. And some guys get it a little tougher than others. There was a fighter years ago, talking about history. There was a tough fighter, pretty good fighter, good puncher, Jerry Quarry. But unfortunately, he was around when somebody named Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali were around. And that didn't bode well for him. But if those guys weren't around, maybe he wins a heavyweight title, to be honest. But
I like the comparison to Obakar. So for those who don't know, Obakar was undefeated in 94 when he came up against Felix Trinidad and lost. His next loss was a majority decision to Ike Corte. Looks like he was, I'm not counting all the fights here, but it looks like he was close to 30-0 by the time he got to Trinidad, or in or about 30-0. Loses to Trinidad. Wins about 7 fights, then goes in with Ike Corte, loses a majority decision, gets back on a long winning streak, and then gets Oscar De La Hoya and gets TKO'd. And then as he got older in 2001, he lost Rafael Pineda.
Listen, Obakar was an excellent amateur fighter from the Kronk Gym with the late legendary Emmanuel Stewart, and he had other good trainers that don't get enough credit that came, quite frankly, out of the Kronk that helped develop these great fighters that came from there, the Tommy Hearns and, all just so many, a laundry list of great fighters that came out of Emmanuel Stewart's Kronk gym. Extraordinary. And Obakar was one of them. He was a great amateur.
54-6-1 when he retired.
Yeah, he never...
54 wins. That's 61 fights is a lot of fights.
If he had somebody other than Trinidad and, guys like Guy Quartet as the champions... De La Hoya was a hell of a fighter. He may have won a world title. But again, you can only fight who's there. You can't control. You can't unless they come up with a time machine for fighters, and I'd like to use it too, to be honest, if they come up with one. And you can go back and pick your era, pick your time zone to be doing your vocation, to be, mastering your craft, your trade. Unless that happens, you got to deal with who's there, and that's that. It's just, and again, sometimes people aren't as fortunate, as lucky to be around at the right time as some others are. There's some people that might say if Floyd Mayweather was around in the 80s, would he have been undefeated? I don't know. When there was guys like Tommy Hearns and Roberto Duran and Marvin Hagler was bigger. Pernell Whitaker, Aaron Pryor. I mean, that ilk of fighters, some of the greatest fighters, maybe of all time, that were all fighting each other during that time. Would Floyd have stayed undefeated if he was around during that time? He wasn't around during that time. That's all we know. And he's undefeated during the time that he's around. And that's all you can, that's it. That's all you can do. So, to close up about the analysis that people want to get the full analysis of with this fight, I gave all the peripheral stuff and more than peripheral stuff. X factors, tangible stuff during the fight. But I thought Munguia, I've been on him his whole career. When he came out and knocked out Saddam Ali, which was some of the worst mismanagement ever by Saddam Ali's people, to be in the ring with Munguia. Saddam was a welterweight, and he was a good fighter. He was an Olympian, but they put him in with basically a middleweight. It was a junior middleweight title, but they put him, he had won the title against an old Cotto, so they put him in that, and obviously it was a mistake. It's easy to say afterwards, but I was saying it before. To go in, the guy was too big for him. But Munguia, I compared him a lot of times to like George Foreman, where he was a middleweight version of Big George. Good chin, good puncher, but raw. He needed to develop. He was raw. He was too easy to hit. He was raw. And I got to say this, and I've said it throughout his career. He's improving. He's still a work in progress. But he has improved. Yeah, I know he's not there yet. There's still somewhere to go. But he's gotten better. If he hadn't gotten better, he would have lost this fight. He's still too easy to hit. He's still a work in progress, as I said. He still needs to get better. But he has gotten better. He has developed from that raw kid. Really. I don't know if everyone appreciates that. I do. And he looks like a hell of a good kid, too. And he just wants to get in there and he wants to fight. And he's tough. And he overcame. He showed my definition. I don't know what Webster's dictionary definition of fighter is. But mine is and always has been to overcome. And he overcame in that fight. But where he should also get credit, nobody would think he's cerebral because he gets hit a lot. And he's tough. And he's got a good chin. And he overpowered. He out-willed, if you will. I don't know if he out-willed Derevyanchenko, because Derevyanchenko had a great will. But I think him being 11 years younger helped him a little bit. He did what he had to do to pull this fight out of the fire. But one thing he did to help himself after the 5th round, where he really got hurt, was he started doing what I had said he should have done early on. He started using his reach, kind of like what Josh Taylor didn't do against Teofimo. He started using his longer reach and controlling range a little bit, keeping Derevyanchenko at the end of his punches where he could catch him coming in, where he could make it hard for Derevyanchenko to get to him and make him pay a price to get to him. And when he started getting full extension on his punch, he started doing better. He wasn't consistent at it, but he was much better at it. And Derevyanchenko wasn't consistent either with his output. He throws a million punches, but he's like a rainstorm. Then all of a sudden the sun comes out and it's quiet. And then the rain comes, then the sun comes out, it's quiet. Boom, and then the rain comes again. That's Derevyanchenko. Maybe because he's 37. He wasn't able to keep the pedal on the metal. There were many times where he exploded all those punches, and then there were times where he went dormant. And maybe it was 37 years old, whatever. But when he was raining the punches, he was winning those spots. And then when he wasn't, Munguia was winning those spots. So it created some close rounds. And again, I thought he had the edge going into the championship rounds, he being Derevyanchenko. But Derevyanchenko, he comes at you almost like an Aaron Pryor, but not quite. He don't have the power of Aaron Pryor. But he comes at you with a lot of punches like Pryor did, and he comes at you with different angles where they're coming from different directions. And it makes it very difficult to navigate that storm when that storm comes. I thought that in the fifth round when, as I said, I thought it was extraordinary the way Munguia survived because he got hit behind the ear. I don't know if anybody saw that, but he got hit behind the ear, Ken, with a right hand. And that screws up your equilibrium really bad. And that's a hell of a difficult thing to overcome. And Munguia overcame it. He overcame it. So, again, huge kudos, huge credit to him, huge credit to Derevyanchenko for doing what he did in the 12th round, throughout the fight, in the 12th round, behaving like a champion, getting off the floor. We've seen a lot of guys get caught bad body shots, and they don't get off the floor. We see a lot that do get off. Arturo Gatti was one that come to mind. But we've seen guys that, even recently, that haven't gotten off the floor when they've gotten hit that. Munguia, that's why I say he deserves to be thinking of himself as a champion in that way. Because being a champion isn't just about how you fight. It's about how you behave. And he has the behavior. And not everybody does. He has the behavior of a champion, Derevyanchenko. So, a terrific fight, candidate for Fight of the Year. Again, I also always talk about the key was geography, as I just touched on. When Derevyanchenko got close, he's the short arm guy, the shorter guy, less reach. He did damage. When Munguia extended his arms and kept it at a geography on the outside, he did better. So important in the octagon, so important in the squared circle, just so important, period, in any combat sport, you know. So terrific fight. My only complaint of the night, these promoters always have to put the fights on at the same time. The same day, the same time. So I have to go back and forth and then do what you did the next day, watch the replay of it, you know. But, and it was breaking my heart that I had to leave the Munguia fight. I think it was like in the 9th, 10th round. I had to leave it to go to the Lopez fight to watch that. I was like, oh, man, I have to leave this and stop my tweeting, whatever that's called. And, you know, when fans are, I'm going over this great fight, this barn burner of a fight, and now I got to leave and say, oh, that's it. I'll see you guys later. I got to go to Lopez and Taylor. See you later. Talk about just leaving somebody in the midst of, can he come back? Can Munguia come back and save his title? All right, see you later. I got to go. I mean.
Well, let's jump over to the UFC. Not as entertaining over there, but before we get into it, guys, if you're listening and you like what Teddy has to say on his breakdowns.
One other thing. The only guy, Ken, excuse me, but the only guy who looked worse, than Munguia. Because Munguia looked bad in that fifth round. You agree? I mean, he was hurt.
Yeah, of course.
The only guy who looked more hurt was Oscar De La Hoya, because he saw another one of his cash cows, maybe his last one. I know he's got another undefeated kid, but I mean, he just lost. Well, yeah, he's got that.
I don't know that he has anyone. The way he's behaving, he won't have any fighters left, and soon enough.
He has another undefeated kid. I can't think of it.
Virgil Ortiz.
Yeah. Mexican kid. I'm being
American. Sarcastic when he's beefing with Ryan Garcia. I mean,
I get what you're saying.
If one of your clients is getting into it on Twitter with you, you simply don't respond and talk to them offline. You don't beef with them in public. What the hell are you doing, man?
Well, Garcia was one of his big cash cow. He lost Canelo a while ago. Garcia was his next big one. He just lost a fight, and now he's losing Garcia. He still has him under contract. I get it. But he's lost him as far as any kind of relationship. He's lost him on what you were just talking about. So you could imagine what he was feeling at ringside. And they showed him on camera. He didn't look too good. I mean, he did not. Munguia looked like he needed smelling salts, right? But he And De La Hoya looked like he could have used some, or maybe he did use some. I don't know, but he didn't. He looked like, oh my goodness, if Munguia goes down here, he might need a stretcher. He might need ambulatory help at that point after what De La Hoya's been through in the last few weeks. But again, the heart of Munguia came through, and he's still there. He's still there. And as far as I can see, at least that relationship hasn't been destroyed. That's still good. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. I had to just get that in there.
No, I was going to say to the people listening, if you like what Teddy has to say about his technical breakdowns of the fights, and you'd like to learn some of the boxing fundamentals or basics if you don't have any experience, or even if you do, if you'd like to brush up on some techniques, head over to Dynamic Striking. Go to dynamicstriking.com and look at Teddy's series. I think, what do you have now, Teddy? 14 or 15 episodes, 15 different...
18 altogether. Wow. Because a couple of them... I even have an MMA one up there now for striking for MMA, which I had never done before. But I have 3 of them, talk about cerebral, 3 of them that are about just the mind, about how to be more confident, how to control your fear, your anxieties, your doubts, and I have one that's about bullying, anti-bullying. How to deal for the young kids out there and the parents that are dealing with that horrible, horrible trend, horrible plague that's actually literally killing our young kids out there, destroying them. This cyberbullying that these people and cowards can go on social media and just say terrible things to some kids that are sensitive and don't know how to deal with that. So one of them is on the bullying, which I thought was important. I thought it was important to do one on that because of that issue I just touched on, for kids and parents to just hear a little bit about how to deal with that. and where it's coming from and why somebody would bully somebody. It's their own shortcomings. It's their own defects. It's their own, lack of toughness, heart. It's not yours. They try to make you feel like a coward or like you're being bullied. They're the ones that are the cowards. They're the ones that are not sure of themselves. They're the ones that are weak. Not you. Not you. So, anyway, thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate it. The other last thing to close on this Munguia fight, the corner, we heard the corner say during the Munguia fight not to throw any more left hooks. And you know what? It sounded good because he got beat when they were both throwing left hooks and he got hurt, Munguia, in the 5th round. But you know what they would have been better off, Ken, telling him? Instead of telling him, don't use one of your best weapons, they would have been better off telling him, don't drop your right hand when you throw the left hook. That's why he got caught. It wasn't because he was just throwing a left hook. Yeah, the other guy, Derevyanchenko's left hook was a little shorter, a little more compact. But the reason why he got hit and hurt was his right hand was down. It dropped as he threw the left hook. And that's something that has to be corrected in the gym. That's a habit that has to be formed in the gym over and over and over and over again. That's why you need trainers. You need teachers. It's so important. That's something that has to be there automatically without thinking about it. So when you're in the midst of throwing a punch, you don't get caught a left hook because your hand drops. That's what they should have told him. But anyway, thank you for talking about those instructional videos on Dynamic Striking website. They're hopefully people have liked them. A lot of people have bought them. And a lot of fighters, a lot of parents that teaching their kids. Also a lot of fighters, pro fighters even I know about. A lot of amateur fighters, but just a lot of white collar fighters that just want to know how to hit the bag the right way. And like I said, a lot of parents that just want to teach their kids the basic art of defense. So we appreciate it.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because I dropped all my kids at a sleepaway camp for the week yesterday, and it's always so stressful leaving the little chickens, letting them fly out of the nest for a week. I can't wait for them to go when they're here, but the minute they leave, I'm like, oh, I miss those little bastards. And I said to them on the way, guys, keep an eye on each other. Look out for everyone. And Cameron looked at me. Cameron's the one who does jiu-jitsu. He just signed up for wrestling. I said to him, guys, keep an eye.
The alpha.
I said, and he's the baby, right? And he's got a mohawk. He's like that he insists on having as soon as school ends. He just looks like a crazy kid, but he's the sweetest of all of them.
Kid. Yeah.
But he's also the most fearless, or at least he hides it the best. And he's like, I said to him, keep an eye on each other. And he said, Dad, dead serious. He looks at me and goes, Dad, I'll keep an eye on everyone. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I know you will, buddy. But he has been talking incessantly about, Dad, I can't wait till we get to New York. I'm going to box with Teddy because now I'm doing wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I'm going to be ready for the UFC as soon as I get out of high school. And I said, well, buddy, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stand to watch you do UFC, but it's always good to know how to protect yourself. So he's all fired up. I sent Rob 2 pictures of him that I thought were pretty indicative of his attitude. He just looks like a little killer out there on the wrestling mats, but it's, 1 out of 3 didn't shy away from the contact, and it's like discreetly like a dream come true. I'm just so happy to have something that we like really both enjoy. And while I'm not delusional about his athletic achievements or endeavors, I have my own life, but I do love watching him excel at something that he's passionate about, and hopefully he'll stick with it. But so he's going to watch the dynamic striking videos, and he's all excited. But speaking of MMA,
hey, one other thing to go back to Teofimo and them, and I think I don't know. I think, like I say, we do a CAT scan. We try to do everything. Maybe it's not necessary. Maybe it is. But you had brought it up, and it was talked about. They talked about it on the interview, the pre-fight interview with Teofimo, where he felt that the ESPN commentators were prejudiced towards black fighters, that they were biased, they weren't treating them right. And my take on it was this, that, and I said it before the fight, that there's no bias again for black fighters. There's nothing like that. These guys aren't those guys. They're above that. These guys are former fighters. They respect anyone who gets in that ring. There was a change because they were so over the top in describing him and doing his broadcast of his fights, the commentating of it, before he lost, Lomachenko, all that stuff, they were so, over the top, if you will, anointing him, like I said, to greatness, that give him a chance. Give him a chance before you do that. And then, of course, he came down to earth. He loses to Kambosos. He doesn't look good against Martin. And he thinks they're knocking him, or he thinks now they don't like him. They're against. No, actually, what it was now they're just telling the truth. Before they might have been, before they were telling the truth in their mind too, that he was very good, but it was beyond the truth. They were doing a little howling for their meals. They were doing a little making their bosses happy, their network. It's on their network, and building a guy up a little bit more than, like I said, give him a minute. Give him a minute before you go bonkers. And they went bonkers. So he wanted to keep getting bonkers. Well, who wouldn't? It's like having a kid and you take the toys away after you spoiled them and gave them everything. And now you say, now we got to be more responsible about what we get. No, what do you mean responsible? You were giving me everything before. Give me everything now. What are you talking about? So Teofimo's reaction was, I get it, was like, oh, now they're this, they're biased, they're this, they don't. Because, no, now they're being more grounded, a little more realistic, and maybe a little more truthful with their assessments, and constructively critical, which is their job. Because you are doing some things wrong, but but already you could see the chapstick is on. They're using the chapstick already to puck up, to do a little tushy. You remember that movie Pretty Woman, where it was a great scene where Richard Gere has Robert, the Pretty Woman, right? Roberts, what's her first name? The actress.
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts. They're on Rodeo Drive, very exclusive, very expensive clothing store, and he brings her in there and gives him his credit card and said, "Listen, I'm going to spend an insane amount of money in here. I want you to do a little tushy kissing. I want you to kiss a little tushy." Whatever way he said it. I want you, and the guy, the salesman said, "Oh, we're very good at that. We can do that for you, sir. Okay, so go ahead." And that's kind of what they got their chapstick. The fight wasn't over yet, and they already had it up. They were puckering up, and they were moisturizing their lips to do some tushy kissing, because it's back. He's back on top again. And all I would say is they don't need me to warn them, but I would just say, venture lightly, venture carefully there. Don't overuse that chapstick. Don't over-apply too much chapstick, because when you over-apply too much chapstick, the lips get sloppy. They get a little sloppy. And the tushy kissing gets a little wet, a little, and the wet tushy kisses aren't as well appreciated as the ones that don't have an overuse of chapstick. they're not quite as well applied or even as well appreciated. So, again, Teo, it's back. It's back. It's back. Matter of fact, one of the commentators, I couldn't help it. He said, maybe. Just one of them, the main guy was like normal, just normal. Like the Titanic is sinking. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh! Yeah, So, okay, what are you going to do? But one of them, the one that's a little more cerebral, said, maybe he's just as good as he thinks he is. Let's calm down a little bit. I know that that's how you make your living, that you have to make these melodramatic statements that sound the way they need to sound on the right side. I get it. But looking at the history we just went through, don't you think? You weren't saying that in his last fight. You weren't saying maybe he's as good as we think he is after Sandor Martin. You weren't saying maybe he's as good as he thinks he is after Campbell. Now he is? Okay, I'm just saying. Ken, I'm just saying.
Be careful with the I'm just saying, because you sound like OJ on Twitter. I'm just saying. Hey,
no, I never sound like OJ.
Well, that's his catchphrase. No. I'm just saying.
No, hey, I'm not. Listen, this is not OJ. This is TA.
I'm teasing.
TA, big difference. But what I am saying is just be careful. You've been down that road already.
Of course.
You've been down that road where you, again, I said it earlier, where you anointed a guy to Mount Rushmore of great fighters a little early. Yeah, he was good. But part of it was Taylor was bad. That's again, you don't like it? Go to another channel that doesn't give you that kind of analysis, because there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them that will only give you one side and one look. But I got to be careful now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to screw up
I just mean that you should learn your lesson. We should all learn our lessons.
That's right. We got to jump over and hit the UFC quickly, because we got a great interview today that's going to air.
Yeah, and if we have to put it off a couple minutes, guess what?
Okay.
My friend, the great journalist Jerry Eisenberg, the legend, he will wait a few minutes because he's great. And you know what? He didn't make it to 70 years in the business. 91 years old,
That's
14
true.
Books. I mean, all the accolade, all the greatness that he's exhibited throughout his career. He didn't make it there because he was in a rush or he had no patience.
Well, listen, before we jump into the UFC, one other thing I wanted to mention. If you're going to do the dynamic striking and learn some of the boxing fundamentals, the best way to feel good is to look good. So go over to boxraw.com, check out the Teddy Atlas collection, 36, the number 36, which stands for 36 minutes to make life fair. If you know, you know. Boxraw.com. Teddy's got an awesome collection over there of boxing-specific apparel. Let's jump into the UFC. Charles Oliveira looked an absolute world beater against Beneil Dariush, which, Charles can be a bit hot and cold early in his career. We've talked about this before. He had a reputation as not having the strongest mind. He had a loss against Islam Makhachev, but my God, he looked like the Charles that people were afraid of for so long when he started getting his engine revving, and he put it on Beneil. Beat the brakes off from first round stoppage, completely and totally one-sided, stopped on punches, basically TKO. He looked awesome. How'd you like it?
Well, he is one of the most talented, explosive, well-rounded, experienced fighters in the UFC, maybe top 5. That's how good he is. And that's why it's pretty extraordinary that Dariush, who's terrific, was actually the favorite. And against the former champion Oliveira. But it speaks to what you touched on. And it speaks to what Anthony Smith, the Lionheart, who's one of my favorite people in the UFC, not only tough but very honest and smart and a great commentator. He picked Dariush to win, as a lot of experts did. And Smith said afterwards, when am I going to learn to quit picking against this guy? And why do I keep making that mistake? And it's funny, because we know how good he is when he's good. And he had won a bunch of fights. Not only did he he lost to Makhachev, but before that he won a bunch of fights in a row, and now he's won this fight as an underdog. My theory is what you touched on. The reason why sometimes people still pick against him, as extraordinary as his talent is, and as extraordinary as he's shown us to be in that octagon, is because he hasn't always been mentally consistent. There was a time where he would give in a little bit, submit a little bit. And then he got past that time. And then he was just what he is. But even at that time, he always had as much talent as anybody, if not more. But he didn't have the mental part yet. And it was that part, which is 75% of this business and 75% of my business, the boxing business, the mental side, to be together in that way. Confidence, mental toughness, whatever you want to call it. Mental resiliency, iron will, whatever. But where that side has sometimes been a little lethargic and a little iffy, but when it's not, and it hasn't been for a long time, when it's not, he's as good as anybody, if not better than anybody, to be honest. It's hard to imagine how anyone could beat him. And he showed that. He showed that again against a very good Dariush. The early part of the round, he was losing. He was on the floor. He's very good on the floor, on the mat. But Dariush had the upper hand. He had him. He was on top. He was trying to catch him, strikes. Oliveira was defending pretty good underneath. But Dariush was in control. He had the upper hand on the floor until later in the round. Then Oliveira gets up and he shows not only his explosiveness, his great power, his great talent, how strong he is, all that stuff, but how versatile he is. He's great on the mat. Now he gets up, striking, and he sets up this kick, a leg kick to the head. He throws a throwaway right hand just to set up the kick, just to distract Dariush, put Dariush in position where he could throw the kick, and Dariush blocked the kick. But when you're getting hit with the most powerful part and muscle of someone's body, the leg, with that ferocity, with that expertise, you're still going to get hurt. And Dariush got hurt. He went back. That's all Oliveira, who's a great finisher. That's all he needed. He jumped on him, striking, didn't let him recover, got him to the mat, and then once he got him to the mat, he pounded and grounded and pounded, and he got the stoppage. Again, just a reminder, we forgot for a minute, like Anthony Smith said, and Anthony Smith's as brilliant as anybody in this business. As he said, we sometimes forget, don't pick against this guy. Don't pick against this guy. And it's hard, I tell you, he's going to get a rematch with, is it Magovic, right? Not Shamaev, right? Magovic is the guy he lost to, right?
Islam Makhachev, exactly.
Yeah. He's going to get a rematch. I think he's going to get unless our man, Dustin Poirier, after he beats Gaethje, which is going to be a great fight. That fight could go either way. I get it, but I'm going to go with our guy, and I love Gaethje too, but I'm going to go with Dustin. But unless the winner of that can get Makhachev next, it'll probably be Oliveira. I would think. And he came out of this, as the commentators said, as DC said, he came out clean. You know, 1 round. Nobody expected this. And Dariush was, again, he was the favorite. He was the favorite, which makes you wonder, like, wow. Like, everybody got it wrong. And, but just, as I said, he's got to be one of the 5 most talented fighters, I think, out there in the UFC. He's just that good.
Yep.
Shocking, sudden victory. Nobody expected. I mean, most people didn't expect him to win, but no one expected him to knock out Dariush in 1 round. So, and then we get to the GOAT. Go ahead, Ken. We get to the GOAT, and a special moment because she retired after the fight. And take us to that one.
Yeah, you're right. That's Amanda Nunes ends her career, retires after the fight. She's always delivered. Just retires at the end of the fight with two belts. Just incredibly impressive. That she's been called the greatest women's combat sports athlete ever. A complete whitewashing of Irene Aldana. I mean, the scorecards were 50-44, 50-44, and 50-43. One-sided, absolute beatdown. You know, she basically retired and said, "I've done everything. I've beaten everyone." I mean, I'm sure that what's the other girl's name that she fought that was in the crowd who was all upset because she retired? I get it, for Juliana Pena. Juliana Pena did beat her via submission back in 2021, but she came back about 8 months later in July. Amanda Nunes did and beat Pena on a unanimous decision. So she goes out on top. Can't blame her. She's been in a ton. Let me just see real quick. Let me see how many title fights in a row she had. Because, I mean, wow. So look at this. She fought Miesha Tate to win the title. Then she beat Ronda Rousey, beat Valentina Shevchenko.
And Rousey was a legend the way she was. Rousey was thought of as a GOAT at that point.
Yeah, Olympic judo player.
Yeah.
Raquel Pennington, Chris Cyborg, who people thought was unbeatable. Holly Holm knocked her out. Jermaine Durandamine. Felice Spencer, Megan Anderson, lost to Juliana Pena, wins to Juliana Pena, and then beats Aldana. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. She had 9 title fights in a row, won them all, lost her belt, then immediately got that back via decision, and then beat Irene Aldana. Like, what a way to go out on top. We very rarely see fighters go out when they look like they're unbeatable, and that's what Nunes does. She's got one baby with her partner, who was also, I believe, a fighter in the UFC, and now they're pregnant with their second daughter. Seem like very nice people. Congratulations to Amanda Nunes. How'd you like it?
I love this scene at the end where they have their little daughter in there dancing. That was pretty cool. Pretty cool. Our little daughter was in the octagon dancing. Like, it made me think of my grandkids when they dance. It's just so pure. It's just so beautiful. But anyway, yeah. You know, I mentioned that when she beat Rousey, who was thought of as a GOAT at the time, a legend. But the first one to beat Rousey, when Rousey was undefeated and looked like she was unbeatable, going through everybody, was Holly Mims, the former fighter, who I called some of her fights on ESPN, the former boxer, who extraordinarily then switched over to MMA and, you know, became a great MMA fighter too. And got to the UFC. That's pretty extraordinary if you think about it. Just like Clarissa Shield, you know, coming from boxing, being a champion in boxing, and then going over for, 2 fights in MMA. That's pretty extraordinary. But Holly Mims actually went over, made the transition, and then stayed there and made a career.
Holly Holmes.
Holly Holmes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Holly Holmes. She made a career after having a career in boxing. She made a career, a great career in the MMA and UFC. So Nunes, the GOAT. When she lost to Pena, for me, she showed that that she was the GOAT by doing what great ones do. Like Sugar Ray Robinson, who's thought of as the GOAT to many in boxing. Sugar Ray Robinson had almost 170 fights. But he was considered the GOAT. And one of the reasons why Robinson, for me, was you could think of him as the GOAT, all the fights he won, all the fighters he fought, his great skills, his longevity, all of it. But anyone who beat him, and it wasn't many in his prime, he came back and he beat them in a rematch, usually by KO. That is one of the ways that you could measure a GOAT. And that's what Amanda Nunes did. She got beat. She came back. She won. Aldana, for me, she never looked comfortable or relaxed in there with Nunes. Maybe part of it was who she was in there with, right? Reputation does precede you when you're the GOAT. But Aldana, very game, very tough, but also very stiff and rigid. Almost mechanical, no fluidity. She did land one good straight right hand counter in the first round when Nunes threw a wide punch coming in. But after that, Nunes, well, again, she showed why she's great, at least for me. She didn't lead with any more hooks, and she straightened her punches out and only threw at the right times in the proper positions. In other words, she corrected the one mistake she made that could have cost her the fight. She made no more mistakes. And that was Aldana's only chance, was if Nunes made a mistake. And Nunes gradually started to take Aldana's apart piece by piece, like chopping down a tree. And she showed, again, Aldana was game, but outclassed, outgunned. And something, Ken, that was interesting to me, even in the physical size. At first I thought, wow, Aldana is bigger than Nunes. She's a big girl. Yeah. Until I saw Nunes from behind and how broad and strong her back was. She was actually the bigger fighter and stronger. When I saw that, I said, oh, wow. And she's, speaking about, of course, Nunes, she's so well-rounded. Striking, grappling, smart. She faked takedowns to just get Aldana to react to them, to keep her off balance, where she could open her up for other attacks. Just really, she showed the whole package on a night that was good she did, because it was the night that she left us, to remind us of her greatness. So congratulations to Nunes for a stellar career. Enjoy your well-earned retirement. And as Ken said, it's really, truly great to see champions retire on top. We don't see it enough in boxing. Actually, I've seen too much of the opposite, where the greats stay too long. Nice to see greats walk away still great. Congratulations.
Yep, congratulations indeed. Well, we got a slow weekend coming up next weekend. So, Teddy, we're going to do, and for the fans, we're going to interview the great and legendary Jerry Eisenberg coming up here momentarily. That interview will air 1 week from today. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, what's the date? June 13th. On the 20th, we'll have an interview with the great Jerry Eisenberg. Just FYI, I will be running across the Gobi Desert. So between that and the lack of activity next weekend, we've got the great Jerry Eisenberg. So please stay with us. Enjoy the interview.
I want to say one thing to just to tease it a little, as they say in the industry, even though it doesn't need teasing. Jerry Eisenberg has a treasure trove of stories in every sport, but in boxing. That's our fan base, right? Boxing, UFC, MMA. He has been and covered more champion fighters than anybody. He has covered Muhammad Ali at his peak and later on throughout his career more than any other journalist. And in his latest book, his 14th book, the one that we're helping him promote, his memoir, he talks about an era You know, we were talking earlier about you can't choose the era you're around. You know, you're around the era, that's it. He was around in an era. You talk about tough times. We have tough times today. But he was around in an era in the 30s or 40s later on. But when he was young, in the 30s, with the Great Depression, with the threat of a guy named Hitler threatening to take over the world, and with fighters like Joe Louis fighting representatives of the Nazi race at the time, Max Schmeling, even if that was unfair to Max, but that's how they represented him, and that Joe Louis had to go in with that pressure on him to fight, to fighting for the world, really, in some ways. That's what Jerry's going to talk about. So if I was you guys, I wouldn't miss it. There it is.
That's it. That pretty much sums it all up. Thanks for being with us this week, Teddy. Thanks for all the insight. Appreciate you. And we'll be back with you next week with an interview with Jerry Eisenberger. And the following week, we'll be back to talk about the Gobi Desert and all the fight action.
Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.
You,
and
brother.
I have just one thing. Get out of the desert. Get in, get out.
One thing I got to tell you is you talk about this all the time, and I think about it frequently as this race is getting closer. I was telling Rob today before we started, I would be lying if I didn't say I am so freaking nervous about this. Not about the running part. I'm not worried about running.
Good. That means you're ready. That means you're ready. That means God did its job. Nature did its job. It's got its creation ready for what you're going to face at your best. Good. Use
it's like
it.
Anything
Control
in
it
life,
and use it.
Experience is invaluable, and I've done enough long events. Like Rob and I have competed at the Ironman in Hawaii multiple times, and that's the kind of event where until you're in it, there's just things that no one can prepare you for that you have to experience. Same thing with a marathon. There's things that are going to happen that you can't anticipate and you can't know until you know. And like sleeping in a tent, eating freeze-dried food for a week. There's so many things over the course of 7 days that can go wrong. It's like that stuff is like keeping me awake at night, and sleeping in the tent and trying to recover from a 28-mile run when you got a 50-mile
the thought
the
of
next
it.
day.
You listen, I've said this on the air. You've been around me enough. You learned it. The thought of doing something is always worse than the act of it. Always. So don't let that thought, don't let that imagination cripple you. Don't let it do what it does to some people. Use your experience. You've already been there. You've been in other similar situations. The thought of it is worse than doing. You're prepared. You're gonna go in there and you're gonna do what you made your mind up to do. You're gonna go across the desert and you're gonna do it great.
That's exactly right. But I just wanted to put it out there so people know, like, hopefully you'll be hearing a good, an exciting and victorious rendition of what happened. But I'm certainly nervous. And my wife said to me, "Why are you doing this if it's causing you so much anxiety?" I said, "That's exactly why I'm doing it. The thought of being afraid to do something
To be alive. To be alive. Not just to exist. There's a difference, people out there, between existing and living.
That's
living. Go get it.
That's right. And with that, we'll be back next week with the great Jerry Eisenberg. Thanks for being with us, guys. Everyone, have a great week. Good luck in whatever you're doing. Thanks, Teddy.